I don't even know where to start with this. This passage was filled with oil. If it continues leaking, I'm pushing my car into the creek over there. Moving on with the teardown, I have the head back already, only needed to take off 3 thousandths, just barely anything. Everything looks good with the head. I also have head studs, so we'll get a good clamp. Don't need to worry about any head gasket issues, and the motor is out. So next step of this is going to be tearing this down again, all the way to the block this time, and also trying to figure out what's going on with this trans. That's the biggest concern right now. So I'll make this quick for you guys, set up a time lapse. Let's get this apart. I don't even know where to start with this. The roller coaster just continues here. So I got the transmission off. Let me flip this around. Okay, there's a lot to go over. So everything came off normally, right? Pulled the transmission off. And if you guys have been following along, trying to investigate a transmission leak. Biggest issue, there's some mysterious leak that was coming from between the bell housing of the transmission and the engine, right in here. So it was suspected that, okay, maybe rear main seal. Let's take a look at the rear main seal here. This is bone dry. I mean, not a drop on here. The entire backside of the engine, completely dry. It is not a rear main seal. But look on there, you'll see some oil residue. Little bit around there. Whole thing, a little bit of oil on there. Let's take a look at the clutch. There's streaks of oil coming from the bolts. First thing that came to mind, I was like, wow, this is weird. Okay, so do I have a leak coming from these holes? But if you shine a light in there, these holes are closed. So it's not open into the engine. These are just closed end holes. So it couldn't be the bolts. The bolts aren't leaking. Well, then what is? We know it's not the rear main seal. Let's come over and look at the transmission here. Okay, here, look around the engine, the transmission housing. There's a little bit of residue, mainly in this area. You got some residue. All right, let's look at the shaft here. This completely dry, as expected. No obvious cracks in here, nothing else wet. So a little bit of moisture around the edges. Everything else looks normal. Really weird stuff going on. So I went back and forth on this stuff for a while, and it was really confusing, but I'm not still 100%. So, okay, throw your ideas out there, but this is what I think. Here's my theory. I believe that this oil, because it seems to kind of stop at the edges, it doesn't look like a ton of oil. I believe this is just residual oil coming out of the bearing here. Okay, that's my first thought. And then the oil around here, I look back at a picture from early August when we first had the car running and all. This oil was present and it didn't get worse. So, and there's really not a ton. It's still, again, this is where you see most of it, but it's not a lot of oil. What I think this is also residual oil that came off of the flywheel. Now, what I think is leaking, let's take a look at the axle seals here. This is a good axle seal. This is on the driver's side, and you'll see how it pops out a little bit. It's got a bit of a lip, nothing ripped, nothing crazy. This one, also looks fine. Not exactly though. So look at it from the side here. You'll see it is slightly uneven. So first of all, it's overall just pushed in further than this one, and it's a little lopsided. So this end has a little bit of a lip to it, but this end is pushed in. And we know that the leak was mainly coming, you'll see everything is still wet up here, was mainly coming from the backside. It was completely dry actually up here, but the oil seemed to mostly be coming from here, maybe running down. And that is exactly where this seal sits. So it's, again, been a roller coaster, but what I think is that this seal is bad. This is what's causing the leak. I think that what we see in here is just a little bit of residual oil, and this is also residual oil, and that it's been just a red herring, and that this is not it. The rear main seal is fine, and it is, in fact, the axle seal. Something else I wanted to mention is I only noticed the trans leak when it was in gear. So when I first started the car, had it on the lift, let it idle for a while, I didn't notice that leak in between the trans. However, when I ran the car on the lift, I left it in first gear so the wheels were spinning. That's when I noticed it's starting to leak. And that means if it's only leaking when it's in gear, it's likely leaking from the trans, which only further reinforces my thought that it is the axle seal. That was a mouthful, but that is the only reasonable way that I can explain it, and that I think it makes sense. Really all we can do is change seals. I'm gonna just replace both axle seals and we're gonna pray. Hope that works. Put it back together. If it continues leaking, I'm pushing my car into the creek over there. Moving forward though, now we're gonna get the engine on the stand here. Got it out. Didn't wanna see this guy back, but we're gonna get the engine on the stand, get the head off. Again, I have the head over here, the new one that was freshly machined. I got seals ready. So let's get this head off and get that replaced. The head is off, and really the first thing I want to point out is just the absolute chaos that's going on here. The amount of parts I have and just stuff everywhere. And again, people always keep asking, yes, I'm selling all the original SI stuff, the motor, all of it, it'll be for sale. I just want to make sure I don't need any of it. And then when I'm done with this, I'll list all that. So the head is off. Let's talk about what we see in here. So oil leak, right? This passage was filled with oil. Looking at the pistons, and there's some carbon on here. So again, this motor is lower mileage than that motor, but that motor's in better condition because this was definitely not maintained as well. Again, a little more scoring on the cams I noticed with this motor, and more carbon. Again, you know, before the carbon cleaning, these valves look beautiful from when we did carbon cleaning, which is pointless now because this head is broken. Actually, let's look at that. So this was the repair, welded it, and then put JB Weld on top of it. And if you look, the reason this kept leaking, it's very hard to see, crack. It goes here, and it runs all the way underneath. So just really got screwed with this one. And well, that's why we're here replacing it. So everything else in here looks good. I mean, it's still super, super clean from, I mean, it's got like, drove 5 miles. So, you know, everything is still very clean as expected. And yeah, as expected. So the next step of this is getting this head onto that motor. So again, it's machined, it's good to go. Again, gonna need to redo the cams with the locking pins and all of that. I have pretty much all the seals I need, but I'm still missing a head gasket and a couple other miscellaneous things. For that reason, and also because I'm going to be leaving for a week. I feel like I don't mention this enough, but I do have an Instagram. I post way more updates on there. You'll see all this stuff before the video comes out. You guys get a lot of sneak peeks. I'll be listing stuff for sale on there. If you guys want to, you can reach out to me. Instagram, right? Check it out if you want to. Back to this. And this is gonna be a shorter video than I would usually upload. I would put more in this, but since I'll be gone for so long, I don't wanna leave such a big gap in content. So I'm gonna upload what you guys see today, what I have here, when I get back, because I need a break from this engine. Uh-oh, just lost my clutch. When I get back, I should have everything we need. We're gonna get the motor back together, replace the seals in the trans, get everything back together, get it in the car, and fingers crossed, no more leaks and it runs good. So that is it for this one. Simple teardown, get a good look at everything. And I guess as of now, it looks somewhat promising. So only time will tell. But next episode, get it together. Thank you guys for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.